Stop everything you are doing right now, because what happened in the past 6 hours is not a military exercise, not a theoretical capability demonstration, and not the kind of strategic development that gets classified and buried in intelligence reports for future analysis. Iran has just activated a weapon system so revolutionary, so catastrophically effective against surface naval forces that the operational paradigm governing naval warfare for the past 80 years has been rendered completely obsolete in a single engagement. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced and expensive warship ever constructed in human history, a nuclear-powered supercarrier representing the absolute pinnacle of American naval engineering and the centerpiece of United States power projection in the Middle East, is currently dead in the water 300 kilometers south of the Strait of Hormuz, with catastrophic damage to its propulsion systems, total loss of electrical power generation, and flooding in 17 compartments. The weapon that achieved this mission, kill against a $13 billion capital ship, cost Iran approximately $8 million to develop, deploy, and fire. This is not merely a tactical defeat. This is mathematical proof that the entire economic and strategic foundation of carrier-based naval power has collapsed under the weight of asymmetric weapons technologies that cost 1/1000th as much as the platforms they can destroy. The weapon system responsible for this unprecedented event is designated by Iranian military nomenclature as the Fateh 110 underwater launch system, a network of submarine-launched anti-ship missiles deployed in seabed-anchored capsules across the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf and the northern approaches to the Strait of Hormuz. Western intelligence agencies were aware that Iran had been developing submarine-launched cruise missile capabilities, but assessed that these programs remained in developmental stages and would not achieve operational deployment for another 3 to 5 years. That assessment was catastrophically wrong. The system is not developmental. The system is operational, battle-tested as of 6 hours ago, and has just achieved a mission kill against the most heavily defended naval target in the world. The operational concept behind the underwater missile grid represents a fundamental rethinking of naval warfare for the shallow water littoral environments that characterize the Persian Gulf. Traditional naval doctrine assumes that anti-ship missiles are launched from surface vessels, aircraft, or land-based installations, all of which can be detected, tracked, and targeted by defensive systems. The Fateh 110 underwater launch system eliminates the launch platform as a targetable entity. The missiles are stored in pressure-resistant capsules anchored to the seabed in waters ranging from 30 to 100 meters deep. The capsules are connected via fiber optic cable to shore-based command centers that maintain constant communication and targeting data updates. When launch authorization is transmitted, the capsule releases the missile, which rises to the surface using buoyancy, breaks the waterline, ignites its rocket motor, and proceeds on a sea-skimming trajectory toward the designated target. This launch profile creates detection and engagement challenges that existing defensive systems are simply not designed to counter. The Aegis combat system aboard the Gerald Ford and its escort vessels continuously scans the airspace and surface environment for threats, but it does not scan beneath the surface for submerged launch platforms. By the time the missile breaks the waterline and becomes detectable to radar systems, it is already transitioning to powered flight and beginning its terminal approach. The reaction time available to defensive systems is measured in seconds rather than minutes, insufficient for the sensor-to-shooter cycle that Aegis requires to generate fire control solutions and launch interceptors. If this channel has been cutting through the propaganda and giving you the unfiltered analysis of what is actually happening in the global military balance, now is the moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The mainstream defense media will spend days explaining why this incident doesn't matter, why carriers remain viable, why American naval dominance is unchallengeable. This analysis will continue telling you the truth that official narratives desperately want suppressed. The specific engagement sequence that resulted in the Ford's disablement has been reconstructed through signals intelligence, satellite observation, and communications intercepts between Ford's damage control teams and the regional naval command. At 0430 hours local time, the Carrier Strike Group was conducting routine flight operations approximately 280 kilometers south of the Strait of Hormuz, maintaining a racetrack pattern that kept the formation in international waters while supporting surveillance and patrol missions over the southern Persian Gulf. The formation consisted of the Ford at the center, 2 Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruisers, providing area air defense, Borit and Eretz 4 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers in escort positions, and 2 supply vessels maintaining formation to the south. At 0437, 8 Fateh 110 missiles launched simultaneously from seabed capsules positioned along the carrier group's projected course. The launch points were distributed across a front spanning 40 kilometers, ensuring that even if some missiles were intercepted, others would achieve penetration through saturation of defensive systems. The missiles broke the surface within 2 seconds of each other, transitioned to powered flight, and dropped to sea-skimming altitude less than 5 meters above the waterline. At this altitude and traveling at Mach 0.9, the missiles were below the radar horizon for the Aegis systems until they closed to within 15 kilometers of the formation. The first radar detection occurred at 0439 when the SPY-6 radar aboard the destroyer USS Ramage acquired multiple inbound contacts at low altitude on high-speed approach vectors. The Aegis combat system automatically designated the contacts as hostile calculated intercept solutions and began launching SM-2 surface-to-air missiles. Between 0439 and 0441, the escorts fired 23 SM-2 interceptors at the inbound missile swarm. 4 of the Iranian missiles were destroyed during the intercept sequence. 4 missiles continued inbound. The terminal engagement sequence lasted 11 seconds. At 0441 and 18 seconds, the first Fateh 110 impacted the Ford starboard side at the waterline approximately 30 meters forward of the island structure. The 650-kilogram semi-armor-piercing warhead detonated inside the hull, breaching the outer plating and causing immediate flooding in multiple compartments. 3 seconds later, a second missile struck the port side amidships, penetrating into the engineering spaces and destroying one of the ship's 4 turbine generators. The third missile impacted the stern at the waterline, causing catastrophic damage to the starboard propeller shaft and flooding the associated machinery spaces. The fourth missile struck the flight deck at an oblique angle, failed to detonate properly, but caused significant structural damage and ignited aviation fuel that had been spilled during flight operations preparation. The damage assessment that emerged over the following 3 hours revealed the extent of the catastrophe. The Ford lost 2 of its 4 main turbine generators, reducing electrical power generation by 50%. The damage to the propeller shaft eliminated starboard propulsion entirely. The flooding in 17 compartments forced evacuation of entire sections of the ship and required continuous pumping to prevent progressive flooding that could threaten the vessel's stability. The flight deck damage and ongoing fires made flight operations impossible, leaving the carrier unable to launch or recover aircraft. The ship was mission-killed, incapable of fulfilling its primary function as a mobile airbase and requiring immediate withdrawal from the operational theater for repairs that will take months to complete in a shipyard facility. The cost analysis of this engagement reveals the fundamental economic asymmetry that now characterizes naval warfare in contested littoral environments. The USS Gerald R. Ford cost $13 billion to construct, not including the decades of research and development that preceded its construction or the cost of its nuclear reactors and aviation fuel for its air wing. The 8 Fateh 110 missiles that achieved this mission cost Iran approximately $1 million each to manufacture, for a total weapons cost of $8 million. The seabed storage and launch capsules cost approximately $200,000 each. The shore-based command and control infrastructure that coordinates the underwater missile grid cost approximately $50 million to establish. The total Iranian investment in the capability that disabled a $13 billion carrier was approximately $70 million. This is an economic exchange ratio of 185 to 1 in Iran's favor. For every dollar Iran invested in this capability, it achieved $185 in damage to American naval power. This cost exchange asymmetry is not sustainable for the United States Navy. If Iran can disable capital ships costing $13 billion using weapons costing $8 million, the economic logic of carrier-based naval power collapses entirely. The United States cannot afford to lose carriers at a rate proportional to Iran's ability to manufacture anti-ship missiles. The missiles can be replaced in weeks. The carriers require years to construct and cannot be replaced at all, given current American shipbuilding capacity. The strategic implication is that carriers can no longer operate in the Persian Gulf or its approaches without accepting unacceptable risk of catastrophic losses that would fundamentally undermine American naval power globally. The panic currently gripping U.S. Central Command is not about the immediate tactical situation, though that is catastrophic enough. The panic is about the strategic recognition that the weapon system that has defined American global military dominance since World War II has been rendered operationally ineffective in an entire theater of critical strategic importance. The Persian Gulf contains 1/3 of the world's oil shipping and is the maritime corridor through which energy supplies flow to global markets. American ability to secure that corridor has been the foundation of American influence over global energy markets and the economies dependent on those markets for 7 decades. If American carriers cannot operate in the Gulf without accepting catastrophic vulnerability to weapons that cost 1/1000th as much as the platforms being targeted, then American ability to secure the Gulf is gone. And with it goes a pillar of American global power that cannot be replaced by any other military capability. The underwater missile grid that achieved this result is not a single point capability, but a distributed network that Iran has been quietly constructing for the past 4 years. Intelligence assessments now estimate that Iran has deployed between 300 and 500 seabed-anchored launch capsules across the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, and the northern Arabian Sea. Each capsule contains a single Fateh 110 missile with a range of 300 kilometers, meaning that any surface vessel operating anywhere in the Persian Gulf is within range of multiple launch platforms that cannot be detected, cannot be targeted, and cannot be neutralized without physically locating and destroying each individual capsule on the seabed. The defensive countermeasures available to naval forces against this threat are extremely limited. Mine hunting operations can theoretically locate and destroy the seabed capsules, but the Persian Gulf covers an area of approximately 250,000 square kilometers, and searching that entire area to find and neutralize hundreds of small capsules would require years of dedicated effort by mine hunting vessels that would themselves be vulnerable to the very systems they are attempting to neutralize. Active sonar systems can potentially detect the capsules, but doing so requires vessels to operate in the threat environment, and the detection ranges are limited in shallow water with complex acoustic conditions. The operational reality is that once the underwater grid is deployed, it cannot be effectively neutralized without accepting losses of the vessels attempting the neutralization. The technological sophistication of the Fateh 110 underwater launch system reveals the extent to which Iranian defense industries have matured beyond Western intelligence assessments. The pressure-resistant capsules must maintain watertight integrity while anchored on the seabed for months or years, protect the missile from corrosion in saltwater environments, and execute a reliable launch sequence on command. The fiber optic communication system must provide secure, jam-resistant connectivity between shore command and hundreds of distributed launch platforms. The missile itself must transition from submerged storage to surface launch to powered flight within seconds while maintaining guidance system functionality. This level of systems integration and engineering sophistication is not something that can be improvised or reverse engineered from foreign systems. This represents indigenous Iranian defense industrial capability that Western analysts have systematically underestimated for decades. The broader strategic implications extend far beyond the immediate tactical situation in the Persian Gulf. Every regional power observing this engagement is learning the same lesson. Advanced anti-ship missiles deployed in asymmetric launch configurations can neutralize the carrier-based naval power that has underwritten American global dominance for 80 years. The technology required to achieve this capability is accessible to any nation with a moderately sophisticated defense industrial base. The costs are affordable even for nations with defense budgets measured in billions rather than hundreds of billions. And the operational effectiveness has just been demonstrated against the most advanced carrier in the world under combat conditions. China is observing this engagement with particular interest because the operational challenges facing the United States Navy in the Persian Gulf are identical to the challenges the Navy would face in the Taiwan Strait or the South China Sea in any conflict scenario involving Chinese forces. The People's Liberation Army Navy has spent 2 decades developing anti-access area denial capabilities specifically designed to prevent American carrier groups from operating in the Western Pacific. The underwater missile grid concept that Iran just validated is directly applicable to Chinese defensive strategy, and Chinese defense planners are undoubtedly already incorporating the lessons from this engagement into their operational planning. Russia is observing with satisfaction as the weapon category where Russia maintains significant capability. Advanced anti-ship cruise missiles delivers strategic victories that validate Russia's investment priorities and undermine the platforms that would be central to any NATO naval operations in the Baltic Sea or the Black Sea. Every percentage point of doubt about carrier survivability in contested environments is a percentage point of degradation in the naval component of NATO's deterrence posture along Russia's maritime frontiers. North Korea, which has been developing submarine-launched ballistic missile capabilities for its nuclear deterrent, now sees a proven operational concept for submarine-launched systems that can be adapted to Korean operational requirements and geographic conditions. The shallow waters of the Yellow Sea and the Sea of Japan present similar operational environments to the Persian Gulf, and the seabed-anchored launch concept is directly transferable to the Korean Peninsula context. The Global South is observing that a regional power operating without great power military alliance support has developed and deployed a weapon system that can disable the naval platforms of the world's preeminent military superpower at a cost-exchange ratio that makes the superpower's dominance economically unsustainable. This is validation of the argument that technological sophistication, strategic patience, and asymmetric thinking can allow smaller powers to achieve genuine strategic autonomy against great power coercion. The human dimension of this crisis manifests in the emergency consultations now occurring across Washington, where civilian leadership is confronting military realities that contradict every assumption underlying American strategy for the Middle East. The Carrier Strike Group model assumes that American naval power can operate with impunity in any ocean on Earth, deterring adversaries through overwhelming firepower and defensive capability. That assumption is now operationally false in the Persian Gulf. The question facing American decision-makers is what to do when the foundation of your military strategy has just been demonstrated to be obsolete. The options being considered range from unpalatable to catastrophic. Maintain carrier presence in the Gulf and accept the vulnerability. This risks losing additional capital ships and potentially thousands of American sailors if Iran chooses to launch follow-up attacks. Withdraw carriers from the Gulf entirely? This concedes the entire theater to Iranian dominance and signals to every American ally in the region that American security guarantees are worthless when tested by competent adversaries. Attempt to destroy the underwater missile grid through sustained mine hunting operations. This would require years and would expose mine hunting vessels to the very systems they are attempting to eliminate. Launch strikes against Iranian shore-based command facilities to degrade the grid's coordination capability. Iran can reconstitute command facilities faster than the United States can destroy them. And such strikes would trigger broader conflict that the United States is not prepared to fight. What becomes apparent when examining the full range of options is that there are no good choices. Every course of action carries catastrophic risks or accepts strategic defeat. This is the paralysis of declining hegemonic power confronting rising challengers who have achieved capability breakthroughs that the hegemon cannot quickly counter and cannot economically match. If you want analysis this deep, this willing to tell you what is actually happening rather than what official narratives want you to believe, subscribe now and make sure you never miss an update. Share this with everyone who needs to understand that the world is changing faster than institutions can adapt, and that understanding these changes is the difference between navigating them successfully and being blindsided by consequences that reshape everything. The historical parallel that strategists keep returning to is the Battle of Tsushima in 1905, when the Japanese Navy destroyed the Russian Baltic Fleet using modern battleships and torpedoes against a force that was technologically inferior and tactically unprepared. Tsushima demonstrated that technological superiority combined with competent operational execution could allow a regional power to defeat a great power in naval combat. The Persian Gulf engagement is this generation's Tsushima, the moment when the established naval power discovers that its dominance is no longer assured and that adversaries have developed capabilities that fundamentally change the balance of power. What we are witnessing is not a temporary setback or a tactical surprise that will be corrected through incremental improvements to existing systems. What we are witnessing is a revolution in military affairs where new technologies and operational concepts render existing platforms and doctrines obsolete. The carrier-centric model of naval power that has defined American military strategy since 1945 is dying not through gradual evolution, but through sudden collapse, driven by asymmetric weapons that cost a fraction of the platforms they can destroy. The world will never be the same after tonight. The assumptions about American naval invincibility, about the security of carrier operations in any theater, about the ability of defensive systems to protect high-value platforms against determined attacks, these assumptions are dead and they are not coming back. What replaces them is an international system where regional powers can genuinely contest great power military dominance through asymmetric capabilities that exploit economic and technological vulnerabilities that the great powers cannot quickly address. Subscribe to this channel because in a world this dangerous, analysis this sharp is not optional. It is survival. Your engagement keeps this work independent and fearless. What is your assessment? Has the carrier era ended, or will American technological response restore naval dominance? Leave your analysis in the comments, because understanding these transformations is how we navigate the chaos together. Tonight, history did not merely turn a page, it burned the entire playbook and left American strategists staring at ashes, trying to remember what dominance looked like. Stay sharp, stay ahead, and never stop asking the questions that terrify the establishment.